Bonjour et bienvenue à ma chaîne YouTube. Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to learn about the simple relative pronouns in French. Les pronoms relatifs simples en français. C'est parti. The simple relative pronouns, or as in French we say, les pronoms relatifs simples, are used to replace nouns or pronouns that are common in two sentences, one being the main clause and the second being the relative clause. So the simple relative pronouns joins the relative clause with the main clause, ultimately combining them into one single sentence in order to avoid the repetition of the noun or of the pronoun. In French, the simple relative pronouns are qui, que, ou, and dont. Let's have a look at the first one, that is qui, which means which or who or that. The first example, le garçon danse, the boy dances. Il est beau, he is handsome. The first sentence, that is le garçon danse, is the main clause, and the subject is le garçon. The second sentence, that is il est beau, is the relative clause, since it describes a little bit more about the subject. Here, the subject pronoun used is il, which makes reference to the subject that we saw in the previous sentence. Now we need to use the simple relative pronoun qui to join these two sentences into one single sentence in order to avoid the repetition of the subject pronoun il. Let's see how. Le garçon qui danse est beau. Le garçon qui danse est beau. The boy who dances is handsome. Moving on to the second example, c'est une image. This is a picture. Elle montre la beauté de la nature. It shows the beauty of the nature. The first sentence, that is c'est une image, is the main clause, and the subject is une image. The second sentence, that is elle montre la beauté de la nature, is the relative clause, since it describes a little bit more about the subject. Here the subject pronoun that makes reference to the subject is elle. So we need to follow the same steps that we saw in the previous example. Let's see how. C'est une image qui montre la beauté de la nature. C'est une image qui montre la beauté de la nature, which means this is a picture which shows the beauty of the nature, or this is a picture that shows the beauty of the nature. Moving on to the next one, we have que, which means which or whom or that. Let's have a look at the first example. C'est le roman. This is the novel. Tu lis le roman chaque jour. You read the novel each day. In these two sentences, the underlined word is le roman, which is also repeated. To avoid this repetition and at the same time to join these two sentences into one, we will be using the simple relative pronoun que. Let's see how. C'est le roman que tu lis chaque jour. C'est le roman que tu lis chaque jour. This is the novel that you read each day. Moving on to the next example. Regardez ce stylo. Look at this pen. Mon père m'a donné ce stylo. My father gave me this pen. Again, in these two sentences, the repeated word is ce stylo. So we need to join these two sentences and avoid the repetition using the simple relative pronoun que. So we get regardez ce stylo que mon père m'a donné. Regardez ce stylo que mon père m'a donné. Look at this pen that my father gave me. Moving on to the next, we have the simple relative pronoun où, which means where, in which, or the time when. So basically, the simple relative pronoun où has to deal with sentences where there is place or where there is time. Let's have a look at the first example where we deal with place. Voilà l'école. Here is the school. J'étudie dans cette école. I study in this school. Again, in these two sentences, the repeated word is école. So to avoid this repetition and to join the two sentences into one, we will be using the simple relative pronoun où. Let's see how. Voilà l'école où j'étudie. Voilà l'école où j'étudie. Here is the school where I study. Moving on to the next example. The next example deals with time. C'est la semaine prochaine. It's the next week. Nous passons des examens. We are giving exams. So in these two sentences, we observe that there is nothing repeated, but it deals with time. We get the hint through the mention of la semaine prochaine, that is the next week. So to simply join these two sentences, we will be using the simple relative pronoun où. So we get c'est la semaine prochaine où nous passons des examens. C'est la semaine prochaine où nous passons des examens. It's the next week when we give exams. And in the end, we have the simple relative pronoun dont, which means whose, or of whom, or of which. Let's have a look at the first example. Voici son ami. Here is his friend. Marc parle souvent de son ami. Mark speaks often about his friend. So, in these two sentences, the repeated word is son ami. Again, we will be following the same steps, that is to avoid the repetition and combining the two sentences into one, we will be using the simple relative pronoun dont. So we get voici son ami dont Marc parle souvent. Voici son ami dont Marc parle souvent. Here is the friend, or here is his friend, about whom Mark speaks often. Another good hint to use the simple relative pronoun dont is to look out for the preposition de. So if we observe, like in this sentence, Marc parle souvent de son ami, the preposition de precedes the repeated word, that is son ami in this case. So when we come across such examples, it is safe to use the simple relative pronoun dont. Let's have a look at another example. C'est le nouveau livre. It's the new book. Je te parle de ce livre. I speak to you about this book. So the repeated word is livre. And if we observe, there is the preposition de which precedes the repeated word, in this case ce livre. So we will be using the simple relative pronoun dont. So we get c'est le nouveau livre dont je te parle. C'est le nouveau livre dont je te parle. It's the new book about which I speak to you.